إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, it's John Fontain. Just before we begin the podcast, please make sure you click subscribe and also set your notifications. And make sure you check out the earlier podcasts. We're up to around 40 podcasts so far. There's lots of podcasts there for you to benefit from. Make sure you check that out. Also, if you can go to the John Fontain YouTube channel as well, click subscribe, set your notifications, and also enjoy the other videos. There's a Fiqh of Love series, a series on Christianity, and other videos regarding Dawah. Also, if you'd like to support the podcast by supporting us financially with the equipment and the travel costs and the running costs, not just of the podcast, but also the other Dawah activities I'm involved in, please support on the Patreon account. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the Young Smirks podcast, and with a very good friend of mine, Imran Hussein. Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Wa alaikum assalam, bro.
How you doing?
Alhamdulillah, bro. Good.
Long time, bro.
It has been a long time. I thought you were going to say special guest, a good friend of mine, which is nice, mashallah.
You're a good friend of mine, bro.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
bro.
Are you not my
You know,
friend?
sometimes what happens when you do these podcasts,
Yeah.
you end up always saying special guest, new guest,
Yeah.
but it's just, you know the brother for 10 years, but it's just, as soon as they introduce you, it's like they're meeting you for the first time.
Subhanallah.
Alhamdulillah,
No, you're my good friend, bro.
Yeah, man.
Subhanallah.
We
We
go
had
back.
some late nights in Manchester in
Yes.
my old house
Late nights and...
with the big whiteboard. Do you remember?
and
All
tea.
refuting each other.
Yep. I remember that one session we had.
Which one? With Jamshed?
Slahuddin and Jamshed were there as well.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember?
I was
also, Abu Jabril, I think, was there one
yeah,
time.
yeah. You used to live in an old, almost an old, what was it? It wasn't a, it's
Is
one of
that-
those,
It was like an old, it was actually an old army barracks.
yes, yep.
It was actually the last time the British Army was set on the public, actually. There's a protest in Peterfields.
Yeah.
I think it's Peterfields. Peterfields? Peterfields. Yeah.
You were there as well, bro, I think. As far
Do you
as I
remember, Celine?
Yeah, I remember. Because I remember seeing you somewhere, subhanAllah. That was the night we were there with Slahuddin.
Yeah, yeah.
And Slahuddin was, and you were going at it, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
I was falling asleep.
So let's tell people what was going on, because about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had like an office, library type apartment, and all the Aira guys used to come down and try their new research, and put it to the test.
Yeah,
And
especially...
I would present my research, they would sit down and refute me for 5 hours, and then you would present your atheism and everyone would refute you. And
That particular night, I remember you and Slahuddin were going at it about what was it? It was about your booklet.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you remember? It was about your booklet and your particular argument.
Yeah.
And he was just deliberately, I think, just wanting to keep you going.
Yeah. But we used to do that because it helps with the argumentation, right?
Yes.
When you actually test it behind the scenes,
Yeah.
you can see where, certain arguments, have issues, etc.
Yep.
So, bro, Imran Hussein, my very good friend, how did you get involved in Dawah? Because you've been working in Aira now for many years.
Yes.
People see you have Epistemix, your
Yep.
YouTube channel, and you also have the London Dawah movement.
Yes.
Bro, that was the times, bro.
Yeah, those were the times where cameras were first starting to go into speakers.
I loved the London Dawah movement.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you get into Dawah?
So initially, bro, I started practicing around, I think, close to 8 or 9 years ago now. And as soon as I started to practice or came back to Islam, I realized that, the first time you realize this is the truth and when it really hits you, you want to share it with others. It's almost like a natural reaction. Like everyone needs to know about this. So that's what I did. I just started to get involved in Dawah, tried to figure out how to do it first and foremost. Went to an Aira Dawah training course. Then got in touch with a local team in West Ealing. Did Dawah with them for a year, street Dawah. And back then, street Dawah was quite tough. In certain areas especially, it was really rough because people weren't used to seeing Muslims out on tables as much as now. And alhamdulillah, one of the great impacts Dawah tables, I believe, have had is that they have sort of normalized Islam to the general public a lot, which has been very, very powerful. But back then, that wasn't the case. So it was quite rough initially. When I first started, I was like, okay, I know the arguments. I've gone through the course. It's going to be easy. But as soon as you go on the table,
You don't know anything.
And it hits you. People start speaking to you, and it becomes real. Like, whoa, you know.
What are some of the experiences you had on the Dawah table in the early years?
Good and bad.
Yeah.
You know, you're really tested. It's when you get to know that Dawah's not a joke. It's not all fun and games. It's not something that you get excited about for 2 days and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. As soon as you go out and you start giving Dawah, you start realizing, well, this is serious. And then you start to appreciate just a tiny bit of what the prophets may have gone through. You know, speaking to their people. You know, unlike then, today people aren't gonna put you up on a stake somewhere and do away with you, right? It's just, we have it much easier today. But you still start to appreciate what they went through. Yeah, it is tough. Like back then, people would pick up material, scrunch up, throw it in your face, swear at you, abuse you, sometimes even spit at you. Not me personally, but I heard stories of brothers being spat at. But now, alhamdulillah, it's much better. But those are my early experiences.
It's interesting you say, because when somebody comes back to the deen, when they start practicing, they realize the weight of the religion.
Yeah.
You know, if you're born into a Muslim family, a lot of the times you don't really realize what you have.
Yeah.
So how was that experience? How did you find the religion for yourself?
You feel a bit ashamed initially, because because when you realize it's the truth, you realize that you spent your entire life living this close to the truth, but you never recognized it, and you're like, whoa. You know, and then you feel that burden of accountability there is. But then you realize over time that, you know, you're human at the end of the day. You're fallible, and you're just grateful that you were guided while you were alive. You know, and that blessing overrides everything. So initially there's that, and then there's that zealousness as well, especially if you're young and you start practicing. You know, you just want to make the whole world become the perfect Muslim, you know, according to what you think the perfect Muslim is. So there's that, and then you burn a lot of bridges in that process. You do a lot of damage as well to family because you're too harsh, you're too aggressive. And then over time you mellow out, you learn a bit more, you know, and you realize that wisdom's a big part of the deen as well. You have to apply hikmah, especially in the da'wah. It's huge. It's huge, the way you carry yourself, the way you conduct yourself. But yeah, I always see it as like, you know, I see a lot of similarities between someone coming to Islam as a revert and someone that finds Islam even though they're born in a Muslim family and then find Islam later in their life. The experience is very similar in many ways.
Sometimes I think it's even more difficult for someone who's born into a Muslim family, because with someone who's born into a non-Muslim family and they find the religion, like, it's expected that you're going to get trouble.
Yeah.
But with people who are born into Muslim families, it's not expected that you will get trouble. I'm not saying you did, but other people who I know who found the religion later, you know, when they start growing the beard, when they start wearing hijab, sometimes Muslim parents themselves have an issue with that.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot.
Yeah, it is, and that's the thing, because you got to remember, especially for the Indo-Pakistani communities, a lot of the families or first generation Muslims, they weren't like quote unquote super practicing as you would see it. You know, they would try to do the best they can, but they had certain objectives because they'd come over and they had to do certain things for their family. So they had a very survival type of mentality, and that meant they didn't really focus on the deen as much, and they didn't have the luxury in some cases either. But that meant that they took on a lot of the if you like, the secular color from the environment that they were in. So when the second generation now starts practicing, and they find themselves amongst the family they've lived amongst their entire life, but now they're on the other side, you know, that dynamic could be quite difficult to deal with, very challenging sometimes, because you know, and especially when you're new and you're young, you know, you don't, like we said, you don't really consider the wisdom. You know, you'll jump on family and you'll say this, that, and the other, and you don't appreciate what they've gone through and where they stand. And if you really want to help them, you have to be subtle sometimes. Take a step back to take 2 steps forward. But it is definitely challenging.
Did you like go head first trying to get everyone?
Man. I went right in, especially with I went right in with certain family members, and I am still feeling the repercussions of that. I'm still dealing with the problems I created back then. Alhamdulillah, finally I've managed to sort of iron those things out. You know, so one of the biggest tips I could give someone that starts practicing is focus on yourself. Give da'wah to your family. I know you're concerned, you have those worries about them, where they're going to go and what's going to happen to them, but be subtle. You're going to do a lot of damage if you go in too hard. You know, you're not going to achieve what you're wanting to achieve. Just give them time, give them space, give yourself time and space, and then slowly, when you get the opportunity, share Islam with them, mention Islam to them, encourage them, but take a positive approach.
So what was your position before you kind of came back to the deen, if you like? You know, was you still a Muslim, or did you have like different type of ideas? Or?
I still haven't. I've thought about that many times, bro, but I still haven't been able to define myself then. Sometimes when I look at it from some perspectives, I would consider myself a non-Muslim. So I would see that I actually came back to Islam, reverted back to Islam. From other perspectives, I would say maybe you can consider me a Muslim. I don't know. You know, I'm just grateful. I
just had doubts and
for
lack
me,
of
it
knowledge.
Was, to be honest, bro, I was like, as far as practicing, there was no practicing of Islam for me. I only knew that I was Muslim, the label. I knew there was Friday prayers, although I wouldn't go to them most of the time. I knew there was fasting in Ramadan, although I wouldn't fast most of the time. I knew there was God, right?
So you did believe in a creator?
Yeah. So what I did have was I had a conviction, a fitri conviction that there's a creator.
Yeah.
There is God. I knew nothing about God. I knew nothing about the Prophet, peace be upon him. Very little. I knew very little about Islam. But the worst thing was that even though I knew little, but I wasn't bothered. I wasn't interested. I didn't want anything to do with Islam. And that's the case with most people today. They just want very little to do with religion because they're so occupied with life. So that's where I found myself.
So you came back, you know, you started practicing Islam, and then you got involved in Dawah. You was doing Dawah tables.
Yeah.
And then you actually set up, you and Sabora, I believe, you had the London Dawah movement.
Yeah.
This was an online platform mainly.
Yeah.
And I think it changed it later into the global Dawah movement.
Yeah, so London Dawah, back in London those days, there was very little Dawah, quote unquote Dawah channels online and Dawah activities online. So Sabur and me, we had a trip to Canada about, I don't know how long ago, it was about 7 years ago, something like that. And during our long stays or evenings in the hotel room, which were very uncomfortable with Sabur, if you've spent time with Sabur, you would know. And may Allah bless him, he's got his own. We got along.
I spent a long time with Sabur
you know
in
Frogel,
Brazil.
Frogel, yeah.
I was with him.
You
for a
named him
month in
Frogel,
Brazil.
right?
Yeah, I named him.
How was that, bro? How was your experience with him?
Sabor's all right. Don't worry, he's in the next room.
I know he's there, yeah. And he knows. I've mentioned this on Dilly's podcast as well.
Yeah,
recently,
I've seen it recently. Yeah.
I think some of the things will probably cut out as well, or
no, I've
maybe
seen
going to
it.
cut out. I don't know. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
The thing with Sabur is he's a strategist. He's a visionary. He plans things for the future. So we sat there during those evenings in the hotel room together, and we were like, okay, we need to do something. We need to do something more online. And then we came up with the idea of London Dawah movement. We sort of sketched it out, came back from the trip to Canada, started the channel, and just started going speaker. We were going Speaker's Corner anyway, just started filming stuff from Speaker's Corner. And then that really picked up, and we saw there was a need for it at that point, and we just carried on.
We kind of turned it into a podcast before podcasts even took off, really.
We didn't even know what podcasts were at the time.
But you guys were like, because it kind of went from Speaker's Corner to you and him kind of hashing out certain ideas, dealing with certain concepts.
Yeah.
I found it very beneficial, personally.
Alhamdulillah.
You were dealing with a lot of the atheist concepts, science. You know, this was before kind of like it got popular, right?
Yeah.
You guys were dealing with a lot of the atheism.
Yeah, and to be honest, to be fair, we were taking a lot of the content from stuff Ira was doing, Hamza was doing, etc., and other brothers were doing. We were just simplifying it and popularizing it. I guess that's what the role we were playing. And it picked up. It did really well at the time, and then we changed it to global Dawah movement, and we had our phases. But one thing we weren't consistent.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson. One of the lessons I learned then: when you get involved in the Dawah, you have to stay on top of yourself, bro, because you can very easily lose yourself. Because you got to remember, Shaitan's one of your biggest enemies, and he becomes a bigger enemy when you get involved in Dawah. Yeah. Because if he has any sense in him, he will go after you as opposed to 10 other people. Because
Definitely.
you know you're involved now in a business which is opposing his business. He wants to take people off the straight path. You're trying to help people come back onto the straight path with the leave of Allah. So he's going to come after you. And we were very, or at least me, I was very new to the deen at the time. And very immature from many perspectives, and he got the better of me in many ways, right? My sincerity was up in the air, and I'll be honest with this now because I think it'll help many other people getting involved in YouTube and Dawah. And I crashed and burnt in many different ways, right? One of the results was the LDM stopped. For whatever reasons, we don't need to go into that, but it stopped. And then we started GDM and it stopped. And then I went offline for maybe 4 or 5 years, 4 years I think, completely. Yeah, so it was.
But that's that. You've been offline for, like you said, 4 years.
Yeah. And
you recently, I would say, the past year, you started Epistemix.
Last year, pretty much. Yeah.
So about a year now you've been running, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just felt
So what was the idea of Epistemics?
similar to what we were doing in London Dawah movement. Just
but it's more like your own platform now, because Sabor has his Darwinian Delusions,
Yep.
which I think is now just his own channel now.
Yes, yeah.
But now this Epistemics is mostly yourself, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's similar. Again, taking stuff that the brothers are doing and just popularizing it,
Yep.
and trying to present it in a way where it's easier to grasp for a majority of people. And yeah, it's just that. It's just, again, see, I've got a bit of a gripe, right? There's a lot of things which have been done under the banner of Dawah online on social media these days, right? A lot of content that's been created under the banner of Dawah. But I don't think a lot of it is directly related to the Dawah, at least not directly related to the Dawah.
Yeah.
So I felt a sense of responsibility as well, because, you know, I felt that, okay, there's stuff that needs to be mentioned, there's stuff that I know, and there's stuff that I need to put out there. So again, it's a balancing act. You have to stay on top of yourself. But so that was one of the reasons, motivating factors. Also because, you know, I thought, look, we've got limited time on this earth. We need to do as much as we can. And if you know, knowledge is one of those things. Even if you have a little bit or a certain type of knowledge, you have to try share it with people. You know. So I thought, okay, let's just do something.
How long have you been in IERA now? About 7, 8 years?
Probably about 6 years, I think.
6,
7 years, yeah. I got involved with IRA very early on as a volunteer initially.
So, I mean, you've had a lot of training from Hamza. You know, you've also contributed to the research of IERA, and now IERA is like developed into, and you know, you also have a new organisation, Sapiens.
Yep.
This is more like academic. You're going to be dealing with a lot of the, you know, the common doubts of atheism, science, etc. So you're also part of that, and you've been doing some research with that as well, right?
Yeah. So originally IERA did both. We did the grassroots and we did the level 2 academic stuff as well. But I think now this separation is going to be very powerful because now there's more focus on both sides.
I am really excited about this, by the way, because I've been saying this for a long time, that you've got two kind of platforms. It's just mingling together, really. You know, with like different levels of knowledge being taught to different levels of people. So it's quite confusing. You've got like people at a very basic level hearing discussions and debates which are not for them. You know, so I think it's a really good separation personally. I'm really happy about it.
And I'm really happy that, mashallah, Hamza, because Hamza was CEO originally for IERA for past couple of years. He couldn't focus on this stuff. And this is one of his areas where he really excels. And to see him back doing this stuff himself and doing the research and finishing his postgraduate studies, and it's really good to see him back in action.
Even seeing him just back online doing videos, and it's refreshing, you know.
Alhamdulillah. So
you know, he's got a good approach, and
so it's going to be good to see him back as well. There's a lot of new content as well. It's going to be really good, inshallah.
So I've heard you've got like over 30 kind of courses, webinars like kind of ready
so we've started them already.
And you're actually dealing with...
I've got 2. I'm doing 2.
What are you doing?
I'm doing one on life without God and one on the fitrah, and so those are the 2 I'm doing. The rest, we've got Hijab doing some, Dr. Uthman Latif doing a few, Hamza doing a few, Sabur doing a few, and a few other brothers. It's going to be really good, bro. I think this content's needed as well. You know, there's different... No, I don't like saying levels, because when you say levels, you think, okay, grassroots is simple or basic, and what's better than that is the level 2 stuff. No, we shouldn't see it like that. I think these are just different avenues in the Dawah. So there is a space for the intellectual stuff, and there's a place for the grassroots stuff, and there's a place for other stuff, I think.
True.
Yeah, so it's going to be good, but overall, I think, nevertheless.
Mashallah.
Yeah, man.
No, it's good. It's exciting times. And I'm really looking forward to see how it develops. And
yes.
So what... Regarding yourself, are you writing anything yourself? Are you planning on doing any books or anything?
I'm actually in the process of writing my book at the moment. I've been working on it for about a year, and just over a year now, I think.
What's it about?
So just to give it more than what it's about, I think the concept is quite unique, and that's what I'm really excited about. Because one of the things we were noticing was that atheists, when they're writing these days, they're writing, number one, on a very popular level. Even Richard Dawkins, Outgrowing God, The Atheist Muslim, I think by Ali Rizvi, The Young Atheist Handbook by Alam Shah. They're writing in a way, bro, what's very interesting, they're not writing academic books. They're writing popular books, narrative-based books, story books, almost autobiographies, and then they're mixing in their shubahat and their doubts and their views into the mix. So we thought, okay, as we were thinking about this and speaking to Hamza about this, I thought, you know what, let's do something similar. Let's write a book that's based on a narrative, a story, where I share my personal story to Islam and the issues and problems I dealt with and how I came to Islam. And then within it, share my reasons for coming to Islam, share those arguments and share everything like that. So that's the angle we're taking here. And also, bro, what's interesting is if you look at any sort of movement throughout history, especially like for example, the Enlightenment period, one of the things that made the views of the philosophers and the thinkers popular at the time was mainstream literature. You know, it was the stuff on the popular level, not the academic writings that made those ideas popular. So we said, okay, let's engage on that level as well.
Even today with Dawkins, same thing, really.
Yeah, and they're doing the same. You know, they're actually doing the same. You see it with all of them, Harris, Dawkins, all of them. So we thought, okay, let's play the game as well. You know, let's work on that level as well and reach people on that level, inshallah.
No, that sounds great. So, what are some of the arguments you're going to include?
So the argument, so the main theme of the book is based on my story, which is mainly to do with the meaning of life, and that's a big thing that people are dealing with today. What's the meaning of life? Because we live in postmodern times, bro, where everything's up in the air, right? The humanity has literally rejected all truth. There is no absolute truth. There is no absolute meaning. We live in a time where the individual defines the world as they want to define it, right? They give meaning to things as they choose to give meaning to things. So there's no definitives anymore. So in such a time, bro, because it's human nature to look for meaning anyway, people aren't finding meaning. And that was my struggle as well. So the main theme of the book is to do the meaning of life and how you can only find meaning through God. The working title that Hamza's title, so give him credit, it's called Dying to Believe. That's the title of the book. There will be a subtitle, we haven't shown it yet. So its main theme is meaning of life, and then along the way I've taken arguments from Hamza, I take bits from hijab, I take things from Sabur about the philosophy of science, and it's woven in through the narrative basically. Inshallah. So that's the idea.
So when we're expecting to see the book, bro? I'm going to put you on pressure here because you're live now. So you know, we need a deadline.
I'm already delayed, so we want to get this done in 6 months.
Okay.
I know it's ambitious. I'm dyslexic on top of it. And I've struggled, but alhamdulillah, it's been a learning experience. So I did the first edit. Now I sent it to my editor. She had a look through it, and now she sent it back to me. I'm going through the second edit. This is the stage where I'm adding in any last bits I want to add into the book now. That's almost complete. That should be done in the next couple of weeks, next 2 or 3 weeks. Then it goes back to her. She does a third edit. That's where she goes through it and restructures it, you know, polishes it off, makes it sound nice, all of that type of stuff. Then it goes for a fourth edit where Hamza will go through the conceptual stuff, and I'll probably revisit it from a conceptual stuff once again, add in the references, etc. And then it'll probably go for a fifth edit. So we're hoping maybe, let's say, if we're being ambitious, end of this year, but inshallah by mid next year it should be out. Inshallah. Yeah, that's the hope.
I'm dying to read.
Inshallah. dying to read, dying to believe.
dying to believe, yeah. MashaAllah, bro. It's really exciting, alhamdulillah. So,
and it's good you asked me, bro, because now it's on record. So
I
get those dips as well. Like I just can't be asked anymore, man.
No, I know how it feels.
Yeah. You've written several booklets, haven't you? So you must know.
I know.
You must know. Sometimes you're like, forget it. I can't do it anymore.
Even just with the small booklets that I've done, and you know, I'm working on a couple of books as well. And you know how it is, bro. You just get distracted as well. This lockdown has been good though. Yeah. Have you done much work in lockdown with your book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had an opportunity to just write.
Definitely. It's been amazing, right? Just having time just to focus on. Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah, and but the thing is, we've been re-strategizing as IRA as well, so we have some really interesting projects we're working on this year. I can't say much yet because nothing's finalized, but we're working on one thing I can say, we're working on a volunteer structure this year as well. So
you're going to be also working with IRA and Sapiens?
I work for IRA.
Okay.
So I'm working with IRA. That's my main job. I'm volunteering with Sapiens. Okay, so I'm just supporting with, you know, a few webinars here and there, just wherever else I can at the moment. Inshallah. So it's a blessing, bro. Honestly, I couldn't have, you know, to be honest, you know, wherever you can work in the Dawah, it's a blessing. Yeah. You know, and it's a privilege, man.
Bro.
Yeah, to be honest, we don't deserve it, but it really is. It's the mercy of Allah, man. Honestly, like we know,
Yeah.
we know ourselves, and
I'm looking forward to Ayera getting back to the volunteer side of things
Yeah.
because I've got good memories of Ayera in the early days. You know, they used to travel up and down the country,
yeah,
delivering lectures in the masjid, you know, getting mosques, you know, active in the Dawah. You know, I thought it was very beneficial back in
Yeah.
back in the day. I think,
yeah,
you know, and I think it'd be good to get that back on
yeah.
track.
And I think
There's
we're
a big gap there, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
For
and
that
we're-
basic Dawah
yeah.
course,
Yeah.
just literally, you know, telling people about Islam.
Absolutely,
I'm
bro.
really
Yeah.
excited to hear.
And you know,
about it.
bro, I think we're at a place now where we learned from our experiences and the mistakes that we made, because we didn't do everything perfectly, right? And I think it's good to put that out there as well, because we're human at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? There was mistakes we made, but we've learned from them. So now going into this whole volunteer side scheme of things with, you know, with the whole background in 2020, I think it's going to be very powerful. I think we're not going to
Inshallah.
make those same mistakes again. And we're going to, inshallah, be able to do much better things with the whole
Inshallah,
process,
bro.
inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, bro.
Oh, yeah,
It's
bro,
been
no
nice
problem.
just to get a quick catch up.
Yeah, man, it's been good.
Yeah, and
been good.
hopefully, inshallah, once your book comes out, we'll do another podcast.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, I'll read it first.
Little
and then
refutation session, yeah.
I'm gonna we'll go through a
Refutation
quick,
session, yeah.
we'll get the whiteboard
Alhamdulillah.
and we'll do some.
Yeah, we'll do
review.
those, bro,
No,
inshallah.
I'm looking forward to it, bro. May
Alhamdulillah.
Allah bless you in your
Ameen,
work
ameen.
and, you know, may Allah accept it from you, bro.
Ameen, bro.
Jazakallah khair.
وياك, bro.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء